So you want to know how to make a Game Chasers episode? Well, I'm going to show you exactly how to do it. I'm going to show you how I do it. If this is something you're interested in, sit back and enjoy the show. Now, contrary to what a lot of people probably think, the main difficulty in making a Game Chasers episode is not the editing. The editing, I'm in complete control over everything. It's the going out and shooting. That's always been the thing that's hamstrung this show. The fact that it's real. The fact that we rely on outside forces to make our content. And what I mean by outside forces is, well, when we go to that flea market, is there going to be games to find? If we go to that garage sale, is there going to be things to find? Is something interesting going to happen? This is the downside of having an unscripted show. And just because of that element of having to rely on outside forces, that means that we can't produce content as frequently as other people can. Case in point, we go out and shoot and we could spend all day shooting and not find anything. That has happened many times. It's happened a lot more recently simply because there's not as many games out there to find. And our collections are pretty big now, so finding something we need is even harder.
Baby, baby, oh, baby, 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 oh, baby, baby. Oh, baby, baby.
What you're seeing here is footage from when we went out and spent all day garage selling, and the only thing we ever found was Wii Sports. It really sucks.
Do you have any video games? No, but we got movies.
Most YouTubers, they can spend all day shooting and have enough content for weeks. We go out shooting, spend all day out there, and come up with nothing, come up empty-handed. And it means we may not even have an episode that month because that may have been the only weekend we could go out and shoot where everybody's available. So that's always been something that's hounded us and made life difficult for us. But we would never fake anything. We would never plant anything. And if we did, and that's why I always find it funny, when these people say that we fake things and plant things and script things. I wish, because if we did, we would have an episode a week, or hell, at least every 2 weeks. But as it stands, we're having an episode every couple of months because we keep it real. Now, the last episode, we went to a game store. I'm very hesitant to do game stores these days. It has to be something really cool. And Classic Game Junkie has always been a great environment to shoot in because there's always going to be a lot of different personalities. There's the basement. It's interesting. It's an interesting store. Now, don't get that confused with a bad or good store. You know, there's plenty of really good stores that we've gone to that's just not interesting to shoot at because it's literally just us looking at games on a shelf and then pulling them off. That's not interesting. Digging around in basements interesting. So when we actually do go out and find something and we shoot, I have to compile that footage. I have to look through the day and find the most interesting things that happened. Whether or not an episode is going to be made from that is contingent on a few factors. Did we find games or did something interesting happen? If one of those happened, then it's usually going to be turned into an episode. I can't tell you how awesome of a feeling it is to go out all day shooting and you know you have something good out of it. That's the best feeling in the world for me. The worst feeling in the world for me is when we go out, we shoot nothing, and I have nothing to edit into an episode for weeks at a time. And I know you guys are wanting something, and I just have nothing to provide. That's the worst feeling. So whenever we go out and we actually have some material to work with, I'm as giddy as a goose. I got something to edit now. So when I have the footage and I'm ready to sit down and start editing, this process could take a week, sometimes 2 weeks. It could sometimes take longer if we have guests on and I have to wait for their interview footage. But if it's just me, Jay, Wood, Melvor, Dodongo, and it's just kind of a self-contained thing, I can usually pump it out in about a week. The process starts with basically me just going over all the footage. I take every bit of what we shot and I watch it over again. And the things that I'm looking for are, well, the most important things, the games that we find, the funny moments that happen. I'm paring it down. I'm paring hours of footage down to 20 minutes or so. But when it comes to editing up the episode, it's not only about just the interesting things that happened. It's about telling the narrative. If you go back and watch a lot of the episodes, you'll notice that there's a theme or a narrative that runs through most of them. Sometimes it's just like you can't force anything. And so if I'm not going to force anything, if it's not there, it's not there. And it's just maybe just, there's nothing to it. We go to a store or we go to a flea market and then that's it. There's nothing there. But if there's some kind of a narrative or story arc throughout the whole thing, my job is to kind of look at that from a storytelling perspective and try to make a story out of it. And when I say try to make a story out of it, I'm not saying force it. I'm just saying bring out the elements that are there to kind of show this journey that happened through this day or this weekend or whatever. It's that intangible thing that I try to really make in an episode to give it that little extra something than just your standard dudes at a flea market looking for video games. One of the easiest examples to actually illustrate this is the Under the Bridge downtown. Now, there's no way to know what a narrative or story is going to be going into the day because these things aren't scripted. You just have to see what it could possibly be afterwards. This one was obviously going to be Dodongo, him living under the bridge. That was going to be like the main narrative going out through the entire episode. Once the day was over, I knew that immediately because that's easy, it's obvious. Now, you have to keep in mind that this episode, we shot hours and hours of footage. Once we went to that bridge and he had that breakdown, and I knew right then and there that that's what this episode was going to be about. I know then and there that that's what the narrative is going to be. So I use him talking about the bridge, him talking about his drinking. I use all those elements throughout the entire thing. When I know what the end is going to be, I can put those elements that lead up to that end at the beginning. And so it kind of builds up to that ending point. It builds up to that climax of him being under the bridge. So you drop in little hints of like, oh, I used to live under the bridge. You know, I got a drinking problem. You throw in stuff like that at the beginning. You know, that I might not have used some of that stuff if that bridge thing may not have happened. If that bridge thing didn't happen, I may not have used any of that stuff. It may not have been anything about him ever living under the bridge used throughout the entire thing. But because that happened, I can now go back at the beginning and the middle and intersplice those storytelling elements of him talking about it, footage that we shot of in the car of him talking about it, to just play up that whole thing. If we never went to the bridge and Dodongo didn't break down, the entire narrative of the entire story could have been totally different. I could have focused on other things that happened, other things that he talked about throughout that entire day, and it could have completely taken on an entirely different feel. So once I have the narrative and I have all the footage that I know I want to use in this episode, the raw footage, that's where I start writing down questions. That's when I start saying, this is what we need to talk about in the interviews. And I'll write those down on a piece of paper, and I've been doing it the same way for 70, 80 episodes now. And I'll go to Jay, I'll have him sit in front of the green screen, and I'll simply just ask him questions. And depending on what his answers are, you know, I may or may not use them. And then once he has his done, you know, I'll do like Melvor if he needs to be done, or Dodongo or whoever. Now, I usually save mine for the last, and that's for a very specific reason. Once I start splicing in Jay's and Melvor's or whoever's Dodongo's, once I start splicing their interviews into the episode, I start to see how it's going to be structured. I see certain things that, you know, it's almost like a lump of clay, and you start molding it. Sometimes you go into a shape and then you're like, I don't want to go there. And you mold it in a different way that, you know, you can take a different direction sometimes. So I like to do my interviews last, just because once I start editing, I can be like, you know what, we need to focus on that a little bit more. But since I've already shot Jay's interviews, I don't want to have to go back and match the lighting, make sure he's wearing the same shirt, you know, all that stuff. So I'll just make sure that I'm the one that talks about it. So by saving my interviews for last, I can make sure that I cover that if it needs to be covered in the episode. The laying down the structure of the episode is definitely the most tedious and hardest part. And I'm very much a perfectionist in terms of, I want the story of this episode to make sense. I want it to be fun. I don't want, the worst thing that you can do is have it drag. And there's times where I felt that once the final product is done, it's dragged in a few places, especially early on. I feel as though my best attribute as an editor is telling that story and just making sure that you give enough information, but don't give too much. You don't focus on one particular thing for too long, because that can really start to get people's attention spans to plummet. So I try not to do that. You're going to be guilty of doing that from time to time. And some just simply for the fact that sometimes you find something interesting as an editor, or hell, I'm editing gaming stuff, so I have an interest in that as well, obviously. So I might find something like Atari stuff. You know, I may focus way more on like this Atari game or whatever than most people would be interested in. But that's because I'm the one editing it, and that's I find it interesting. I can't put my mind in everybody else's shoes. You know, you can't please everyone. So I just, whenever I'm doing this and editing, my mentality is just do what I find the most interesting, and hopefully other people will find it interesting too, because you just simply can't please everyone. This process of laying down the structure can take days. It's the most time-consuming part, because you know I'll watch it through, and then I may change a few things and switch some things up. You know, I rarely will ever just lay something down completely and just be happy with it. So I'll always go back, and it's malleable. It really is malleable. Once that's done, I start working on backgrounds, the backgrounds that we sit in front of for our green screen interviews. And I'll do different like game box art, or sometimes Nintendo Power covers or something. You know, I'm always having fun with that sort of thing. And the game backgrounds are a little bit more complicated, because that involves me capturing the footage, whether it be on, you know, the Retron, if it's a Super Nintendo or NES game, or if it's something really obscure like Atari, or Commodore 64, I'll just do screen capture and play it on the PC through emulators and stuff. That's honestly the easiest way because I'm trying to get the best image possible. There have been times where I've messed up and used the wrong game because I just clicked the wrong file or stuff. I mean, it happens. You know, sometimes you screw it up. But once I got the game footage in there, I'll put it into the scene, and I will render it out. And sometimes, you know, an episode could have 10 of these things. So that part alone can get really time consuming. There have been episodes where I've spent all day doing just that. Now, once I have that done, I'll usually go and do the overlay keys, you know, whether it be a name key or the stuff that we bought or the information for a game. And a lot of times I'll use different sources for those. A lot of times I'll just go do Wikipedia. I mean, that's all you really need for what we do. We're not historians here. And sometimes I'll just have fun with it. If it's like a bowling game, I'll say it's bowling, you know. So I enjoy doing that and seeing how many people might actually catch something stupid written inside. And there literally is always a typo in them, at least one in an episode. Now, usually around this time, it's on to something that I really like doing, and it's something that you don't notice as a viewer. You don't notice if it's been done or not, because you don't know what the previous footage looked like, and that's color correction. No matter what the footage is from, what camera it's from, there's always going to be a degree of, or there should always at least be a degree of color correction. Just because you see a piece of really bad looking footage on an episode, it doesn't mean it wasn't color corrected. Just know that whatever you're looking at, it looked worse before. Sometimes there's footage that's unsavable, whether it be overexposed, like the sun's too bright, or it's too dark. I fix it as much as I can, but sometimes there's only so much that you can do, because if it's overblown, say, that camera is not receiving the information to know what it's supposed to look like if you bring down the brights. It's just basically nothingness. So I can fix most stuff pretty decently, but there's a limit. But most of the stuff that I color correct is just more subtle than anything. And like I said, it's not anything that you as a viewer notice. In fact, you're seeing it right here, the before and after. You're just now kind of understanding what's going into it. So this footage right here is a perfect example. It doesn't look perfect right now, but it looks a hell of a lot better than what it did. And that's just me bringing up color balance and basically bringing in some more blues and different levels, messing with the levels. That's usually what I'll do. Saturation to a degree on most of this footage. One thing that I change every single time is the interview color correction. If we had the luxury of a really big studio, this wouldn't be a problem, but because we still shoot in a confined space, whether it be a studio or my old bedroom, the subject, since it has to be, because of lack of space, it has to be somewhat close to the green screen, and not even so much close to the green screen. The green screen is so big that it bounces light off the walls, and that green light bounces back onto the subject. There's a subtle green to the subject that you can't even notice, you don't even notice with the naked eye. Once I key everything out, I will take those green levels down a notch and do some tweaking with the colors and probably a little bit more with the levels as well, and just get that overall greenish hue off of the subject. Now, one kind of random thing that I love to do in episodes nowadays that I didn't necessarily used to do back then, I did to a degree, but way more now. When you do so many of these things, they just you kind of lose those creative juices to a degree. I like to be creative. I enjoy doing odd things sometimes. And so this last episode gave me the perfect opportunity to do that. To do this skit, this scene of me and Wood reenacting Philly Flasher. This whole scene probably took about 4 hours to do. It wasn't too difficult, but I really, really enjoyed doing it just because I get to step out of that formulaic Game Chasers mode for a few hours and create something different and funny and unique, and it just kind of sparks my interest a little bit more. So it was pretty simple. I just took some backgrounds, cut them out. I green screened me and Wood, and it was just all done in After Effects. Like I said, I'm not going to give an After Effects tutorial here, but it's simple animation. It wasn't too terribly difficult to do, and it's still not done. Now comes the part that I simultaneously hate and like at the same time. I hate it because it's very tedious to do, but I love it because it can do so much to change the mood, the atmosphere, everything about a particular scene that happens, and that's the music. You can change so much about a particular scene depending on what the music is. For example, look at this scene with Dodongo under the bridge with this music.
You don't stop. You don't quit. You don't fucking give up.
If a person learns a lesson after such ordeals, then I think it's an experience that it really is worth it.
I always thought I was going to do something with myself. I always thought I was going to change the world growing up. You know what I mean? Whether it be through music or whatever.
And now with this music.
You don't stop. You don't quit. You don't fucking give up.
If a person learns a lesson after such ordeals, then I think it's an experience that it really is worth it.
I always thought I was going to do something.
You go from sentimental to almost like you're making fun of him. It's with this more comedic music. It's you're making light of the situation. Now that's an extreme example. A lot of times it's way more subtle, but you can convey so much emotion about what's happening in a particular moment with simply just using the right type of music. That's the part that I really like. I like molding. That's that final touch. If I really want to convey something, it's that final touch that just drives it, that you may not just overtly hear, but you kind of experience it while you're watching, and it just puts you in a certain mood that I'm trying to put you in. That's the fun part. The part that I hate is just the mechanics of doing it. Going in there, finding the music that I want to use, which sometimes can take a long time because there's so much material out there. We go to a site that you can buy royalty-free stuff, so we pay a monthly fee. But there's so much music on that site that sometimes it just takes a while to find exactly what I want. And so that is tedious in of itself, but also as well just going and putting the music down and just adjusting the levels and making sure that, when someone's speaking, the music is low enough to where it doesn't drown out what they're saying. And when it's quiet, the music is up. You want the entire episode to have constant levels. So when there's parts where there's no dialogue or nothing's really happening, you want to up the music and make sure that those levels throughout the entire thing are pretty much even. So that process of just making sure that the levels and the music and the dialogue, they're all even. And throughout the entire thing, there's no just sudden kind of like pops when like natural audio comes on. That process could, depending on the episode, if it's a 30-minute episode, could take 4 or 5 hours because I'm very meticulous about it. If it's a 20-minute episode, 2-3 hours. But that's pretty much the finishing touch of the episode. Once that's done, I will watch it through, make sure there's no huge mistakes. Inevitably, always, I'll find little tweaks and stuff that I'll do. Like once that I go through that last pass through, I'll find something that I want to just tweak or change or whatever. And sometimes I'll even see, I'll do the Patreon version, and then as I'm editing the swears out for the YouTube version, I'll see different things that I missed before. It's like, oh crap, I need to change that, or I want to tweak that a little bit. So I'm always finding something, and it's like one of those things where like a painter says that his painting is never finished. I always feel like these are never finished. I can always find something to improve upon, and change to some degree. But it's like I have to. It's not necessarily finished. It's just like I have to stop working on it. It's done for now. So I will render it out and upload it. And the rendering out process could take anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, sometimes even an hour and a half if it's really long. And since I have country internet, the upload process could take upwards of an hour. People have asked why the episodes aren't in 180p and they're only in 720. Well, that's the reason. It's because my internet sucks. If the files are 1080, then they're going to be 3 to 4 gigs, and it's going to take half a day to upload those things. So once the episode's done and rendered and it's ready to be uploaded, I upload it. This is the part that I hate, because I'm a video maker. I'm a creator. I don't feel as though I'm a YouTuber. As a YouTuber, you have to do certain things that I find just so tedious. So when you're uploading the episode, you have to put the tags in and the metadata and the end screens and all that garbage. And it's just like, once the episode's done and I'm done making a video, I just want it to be done. I don't want to have to go and do the YouTube stuff. But we have to do it. We have to do that stuff. It's annoying. I don't like it, but it has to be done. Especially in this climate of YouTube where you have to do every little bit of edge to not get screwed over by the algorithm, which sucks. And also, I'll take this time to do the Photoshop of the thumbnail. And I really don't like doing thumbnails. But at least I don't like doing them for Game Chasers, because I can't get as creative as I can just some random video. I'll just pick some kind of interesting still shot from the episode to kind of get people's interest, and then I'll do the standard stuff on top of it with the logo and all that other stuff. I have to be careful with the thumbnails for Game Chasers, because I want it to be recognizable to you guys as you immediately see it and see, okay, this is Game Chasers. But I also want to make it kind of interesting and pull people in who may not know what it is. So it's like this fence that I have to walk down. There have been times where I've wanted to do something really crazy just to get people who have maybe never seen us before to be like, oh, I want to click on that video. But I've stopped short of doing that because you guys may not recognize it as being a Game Chasers episode, and you guys come first. So there's that fine line that I'm walking, and it's just like, that's the life of a YouTuber. It's like, you're always second guessing yourself, I guess. So that's pretty much it. Like I said, the hard part is just getting the actual footage, going out and shooting. I hope you understand why it is they aren't as frequent as they used to be, and it's just because that's the reality of game chasing these days. You know, we've been at this for 7 years straight. No breaks, other than just maybe like a couple of months. And it's just really, really difficult to do this type of video now. So especially around this area, Texas used to be a hotbed. You guys know, you saw the videos. Texas is a big state, which means we have a lot of games here. We don't have as many anymore. This DFW area, it's oversaturated with people doing exactly what we do, and it's just, there's a lot of competition out there. And don't say, oh, we just got to get up early and we do that and we still strike out. So, are we going to stop? No, we're not going to stop. We're still going to go out. We're going to do the best we can. It's just that there are certain limitations nowadays that there wasn't, when we first started doing this. And remember, we have links to DVDs with a lot of these episodes down below. Keep in mind, we are starting to run low on season 2s and season 3s. So if you don't snatch it up now, may not be around here in a little bit. So keep that in mind. And we're going to be offering new perks on Patreon. So if you want to get started on that, now's the best time. So take care and thank you for watching. Oh, shit.